Hello everybody and welcome to this update on the East Broad Top Railroad. So, it's been another month since I've uploaded a video, so it's about time I uploaded another one. So let's discuss what we've done in the last month. So the last month really hasn't been too proactive with getting new stuff done. It's been me going back and redoing a lot of old stuff. So to kind of elaborate on that, basically everything from here to Agwick was done basically using Google Maps. I haven't been to the East Broad Top since I was a kid. Up until last weekend, I had the privilege of going up for the opening weekend. So everything that I did from basically this video in the past has all been me just more or less doing it based off of Google Maps. Because last time I went was when I was a really young kid and I didn't really have any kind of working memory at all. So from this point onward, it's going to be a lot more prototypical. But as such, a lot of what I've done is based off of 2025. Like, for instance, this and a bunch of other things that I went back and redid. So a lot of this month was me going back and redoing things. But this video is going to be a hybrid, so it's going to be a bit of a long one, but I think you guys will enjoy it. So first off, I have graded and started on the shade gap branch to backlog. So this will be good. In phase 1, it will go up to and service the quarry here, but that is it. That is as far as it will go. Anyway, going back in here to town, for those of you who are observant, notice that the water is now actual water. So I really like the way that Agwick looked with the real water. So I went ahead and basically anywhere that you can see from the railroad, I went back and replaced with actual water. And then where you can't see is still regular splines. So it's going to be a little bit of a hybrid in that aspect. But for now, it is what it is. I don't really notice too much of a frame drop. But if it does, I can always change it. But let's move on to this. So the yard here has seen a rework before the this went all the way out to here. That's where the roundhouse was before, and that wasn't accurate. And I didn't move it for a couple of reasons, but basically ended up moving it finally, and now it is where it should be. And I think it looks decent. I'm going to have to rework some things, but it basically makes a lot more sense within here and stuff. So I'm a fan. I like it a lot better. You guys honestly probably wouldn't even notice any kind of a change with it at all. But anyway, the rest of the video is actually going to be completely different. It's going to be me driving the good old 17 here, and we're going to be recreating a run all the way to Mount Union. And then as we are going through, I'll do some run-bys, and then I'll kind of deviate off to explain what all I've done. So, without further ado, let's give it 2 blasts of the whistle here, and we'll be on our way. Oh, one thing I should show you guys before we get off. You'll notice that the wheels are very slippery here. That is because... oh, hang on. You have to cycle through, and then it should be fine. Alright, well, with that out of the way, let's restart this. I do have to rework the intersections here. Don't mind the car here. I know it's not EBT, it's just the closest I can find to a proper combine. The crossings will have cars that stop. It's just not been on my agenda of stuff to do so far. Alright, so as we're passing here, we'll let the train kind of fly by here, but so a majority of this month, like I said, has been me going back and redoing a lot of things to make it more accurate to the Common Carrier era, which is the EBT that I am modeling in the game. And that unfortunately means that a lot of what I did in the past is removed, including this. So the water plant wasn't here until either the 80s or the 70s. I'm not exactly sure, but either way it was not here in the 50s, which means that it is not going to exist on my railroad. Alright. And now that we are clear of the yard limits, we can actually speed up. Alright, here we are passing through the cut. And now we are coming up on one of the more famous locations here to film. Alright, so this is one of the scenes that I was hoping that people would enjoy. Again, don't mind the cars clipping into the train cars. Alright, so as our train passes the ice cream place here, this is one of those unfortunate things that is most likely going to be taken out of the game. So unfortunately, the ice cream shop was not here until the 60s, and it's not prototypical to the main Common Carrier era, so more than likely it will be removed. However, depending on what you guys say in the comments below, I might leave it as just an Easter egg to the railroads. It's one of my favorite places on the railroad. Alright, from now on we're really going to stick with the engine here, just so that we're not missing it. It's supposed to be more or less a drive-through of the railroad. I've been asked by far too many people to do a run through of the railroad, so this is more or less that. Alright, we're coming up on McMullen Summit here. This is probably the most famous spot to photograph the trains, even in the Common Carrier era. It's definitely a fan favorite. So not much has changed in this area of the route. Eventually we will go back and do some more detailing with certain things like this house over here. So here we're passing one of my first fictional scenes that I did, and this is the horse farm. In real life, this is just nothing more than fields. But I like the way the horse farm looks. Alright, we're going to fast forward because nothing's really been done here. But we will give you a little taste of the sounds up here in a little bit. Alright, so going down here, we will catch up with the engine for the fill here. And we'll give you a little taste of what it would look like from the rail fanning aspect here. Which I think looks really, really neat. Alright, we'll switch up views here. We'll give you a little taste of the cut life. You got a little Easter egg here, guy filming here. I have added certain things to the route, including sounds. So we'll enjoy the engine as it comes around into the cut here. Alright, so now we're into the fields here. We're quickly coming up on the Colgate Y. Unfortunately, the Colgate Y is going to be another one of those things that is going to be cut out of the route since it did not exist there in the 1940s. So I'll speed on ahead here so we can watch the train a little bit. But basically, my plan is I'm going to do several renditions of the route. One being early on, like early 1900s, which will include the actual Rockhill furnace. And then you will also have a 1930s version, a 1930s, 40s version, and then you'll have a 1950s version, which is pretty much just the mainline to Alvin plus the Narco spur. Or the other option is that we do a semi-fictional route where I just have all the branch lines included in one route, and you can run it and delete certain things as you wish, which may be the option that I go, I'm not sure. Now, one thing I should mention is that there is another person doing another version of the East Broad Top Railroad. He is not affiliated with my project, but he is working on his own version of the East Broad Top, and his will be a modern version, which will encompass everything up to and including from the Colgate Y, which we just passed, all the way to Saltillo. That is going to be his version of the route. Now, eventually I may go back and decide to redo the rest of it and make it into a modern day route, but his will be the more modern route, and mine will be encompassing the common carrier days. That's what I've decided on. Alright. So, we are quickly coming up on a part that I had reworked. So, we are approaching Shirley'sburg, which I think we might be in the main line for, I'm not sure. I hope so. Yep, we're on the main line. So, we'll fast forward here. So, here's one of the things I redid. So, we got a nice little dry brook here. And then going up here, we have the Shirley'sburg siding and depot. The siding was about 1,400 feet long, and then the spur for the station itself was like, I think 600 or so feet. It wasn't very long, but alright, we'll hop on the train here. As you can see, we're passing over our little bridge here. And now we're into the siding. And I'll make this go away so we're seeing more of the views. So there's still some grass work that needs to be done, but so far it is looking pretty good. And over there you can see Shirley'sburg. Now I will let the engine run through the cut here as I explain some things. But we are coming up on the graveyard, which we're gonna show you from this angle here. Alright, and for those of you who want to see the other side, this is the other side. Which I think looks pretty cool. Alright, so we're going to let the train run away here for a little bit. One of the major things that I did was I ended up reworking the road from Shirley'sburg. So the new route kind of goes up and around here, and then would come across right about here, and then down in. However, that was put in the late 80s, early 90s, and before that, it would curve down here and actually go across the track right here after the graveyard. The graveyard's literally right there, and then we'll go across the bridge. So that's what I've tried to mimic here. I got a little bit of topography stuff to do. As you can see, it's looking a little bit wonky, but so far so good. And we do have the brook in here that eventually winds its way to the creek. Alright, going back to the train here. Another one of the things that I reworked is when I went up to the East Broad Top last weekend, I wanted to travel on this road to see what it was like. Before I had it as a three-tier system where you have the creek off to the left on one level, then you got your railroad, and then the road would be up high. But this road actually goes up and down a lot, and pretty much is level with the railroad, more or less the whole way. So I tried to mimic that. And as you, oh, didn't mean to do that. And you got a little bit of a view there through the trees that you can see other stuff. As you can see, the road winds itself up and down. Alright. So now we're coming up on another reworked part. So I'm going to zoom out here just to show you. So up here to our left, you'll notice the transition between real water to the artificial still water. And you'll notice here that this looks a lot different, the fields, than what it used to. So in the current 2025 version, this would all just be trees and stuff, but in the 50s this was actually used as farmland. So I tried to mimic that. The farmland actually goes all the way up here. Additionally, once we cross the road here, we'll be coming up on the Tuscarora Oil Co. pump house, and that got a rework. Now it includes its proper siding and what I imagine that the layout of the buildings would look like. Alright, so over here we got Pump House Road veering off to the right, and then here we do have our siding for the oil house, which is pretty nice. And then off to our right we have the pump station, the pump house. Now we do need to move some of the trees a little bit, but for the most part they're pretty good. And then we got one of my favorite scenes personally right here. I think it's neat. I love it. It doesn't really come across in 1080p, but I just love this scene. It's just very, very neat. Alright, and as you can see, we are steaming towards Agwick here, which is pretty neat. Agwick is another place that got a revamp, by the way. As we get up here closer, we will be showing you. But for now, we're going to show you a little bit of a scene that I had set up here. Even in the 1950s, you would have some rail fans hanging around, especially with this railroad. So I definitely tried to mimic that. Alright, now I'm going to fast forward here to give you guys a cool little view of Agwick here. I'm going to try and give you a cool little view with the water and everything. And then after the train passes through, we'll go over the things that have changed. One of which being the bridge in the background. How neat is that? Let me give you a little bit of a back view there. Alright. So, one of the things we redid is this bridge. Now the bridge has its own car spawn, which I'm going to get rid of so that way you don't see as many cars running over it. But this bridge is a lot more accurate. Additionally, I'm going to pause it here so the train doesn't get too far away here. But it's on a lower angle, or it's on a different angle than the bridge, and it's also lower than the bridge. So that's my guess as to what it looked like. But moving on up here, this road does come up to meet the railroad at a grade crossing, which is here. So that makes a unique scene that I'm going to try and give a little bit more detail to. But right here is another thing that I changed. So 200 feet away from that crossing is some sort of stream that would feed into the Agwick Creek. So I tried to mimic that here. And I think it looks pretty nice. I really do like how it looks overall. Alright, moving on. Let's continue to play the thing. Alright, now we're going to hop back on the train here. As we start climbing the grade, one of the things that you'll notice is that this is all now grassed and seamed out the way it should be, at least in the immediate proximity of the rail. Like I said, we do have more stuff that we need to do, but overall it looks pretty good. Off to our right we have our orchard, which you got some cherry trees and then a lot of apples, which is pretty neat. And then we have a farm off to the left as well. So topography changes that happened. There are way too many to mention, but one of them is right here. And then also up here on the hill here. Additionally, one of the other major topography changes that you'll notice is way back at the cut before Colgate Y. That was entirely reworked as well. Alright, up here on the left you can ignore the buildings here, the barn and the house. It's just stuff that I was putting down for possible assets to use, and I never deleted. So those will just be fields when the route is released. And up here on the right, as our I forgot to whistle for the crossing. But up here on the right we do have more topography changes, along with one of the farms that is now raised on a hill. I actually think it gives it a lot of character, and I think it looks really nice. So that's one of the farms up there. Alright, and off to the left you can see more farms. Now with added grass. And as we go through the cut up here, you will see now the road that was at some point in the 40s cut off and rerouted. And we will be crossing the rerouted part of the road in about 30 seconds here. But right there is where the road would have originally gone over. Alright, and here you get to one of my favorite scenes. depending on where you put it, but I'm gonna put my camera right here, just to give a glimpse of everything. But one of my favorite scenes. And we can zoom in here if you prefer that angle. Now we are quickly coming into the part of no more detailing. This is as far as the detailing goes, but we are now passing Adams Summit, which is the or Adams Siding. Adams Summit was right up there at the road, but this is the last siding before we crawl into Mount Union. And as you can see, if you look off to our right, it is just base detailing of farms, but I think they look pretty good so far. More work will be done with that in coming updates. And as you can see off to the left, we do have certain issues that we need to fix. I forgot to whistle again. But, so this is the original layout of the road. So, quick pause here. So, up to here is where I got before I realized that from here onward is where I started using the 1957 aerial view maps. Anything prior to that is either all stuff of my imagination or based off of Google Maps. So that gives you a scale of everything that I had to go back and redo. But so this road, not exactly sure how I'm going to do it, but this road is 522. It would curve off to the left, and then there was a road that would sprout off of it that would cross the EBT at diagonal right after the siding here at Adams. So that's where we're at now. And from here on, it's a straight shot down into Mount Union, which we will get to here in a minute or two. And as we go down here, we'll hop on board the coach at the end, and off to our left you can see the beginnings of what will be an Easter egg in the route, if you guys want to follow it when you guys get the route. Alright. So now it's just a matter of coasting down into the yard here. And as you can see up ahead, there we got the coal wash plant. And off to our left here, you can start to see what will be Allenport, which I believe at the time was known as Allenton. Or Allenton, but that is what those roads off to the left are. And then to ditch the train for a little bit, off to our right here, one of the major things that I did was I actually put in water for the entire Juniata River here, so now it looks very, very nice. And it only goes up to right here where you can't see it anymore. After that, it just disappears. But, alright. Moving on. Alright. So one of my, it's going to be one of my favorite scenes once it actually gets, you know, finished. But right here we have the end of the dual gauge trackage. So there will be a yard limit sign in here, and this is the end of dual gauge track. So from here on out, everything into the yard would be dual gauge track. And there's a really cool scene of a video that I have where a train is more or less right here, and there's a guy up here at the crossing that's filming the train. Alright, so we're going to pace the train here a little bit. So now you can see that our engine is running on the inner part of the track, which is the narrow gauge part of the dual gauge. Alright, so we've more or less made it into Mount Union. A lot of topography changes are going to happen here, by the way, so stay tuned for that. And that's what that looks like. So, pretty neat overall, I would say. Alright, so we are officially entering... actually, I shouldn't whistle at that because this road actually wasn't here. This road actually curved off to the left. So in the real version of the game, there will be no crossing here going off to the right. Again, this is all stuff that was reworked in the late 80s, early 90s. Basically to just bypass the town. Alright, so you're probably wondering what all this is, and this is essentially going to be a bridge. I just haven't modeled it out. It's just more or less the creek bed for now. Alright, as we let this thing crawl into the yard here. Oh my goodness. We'll show you what's been done with the yard. So, everything is dual gauged as to where it should be. Yes, there are some bits that are dual gauged, and then there are some bits that are not. This is a very quirky yard in terms of operations. It's going to be a fun one to operate, for sure. But over here we have what is currently the coal wash plant. Basically to spoil a big surprise, I am making custom buildings for this. Or are having made custom buildings. It's kind of a mixture of both at this point. And one of those things is going to be the coal wash plant. The other one will be the timber transfer, which will be in these two tracks here. And the other one will be the water tower, which will be here. Other ones, I'm not entirely sure, but those are the ones that I'm like 90% sure that I'm going to be doing. But the coal wash is happening. Over here we've got the start of the general refractories plant here. One weird thing about this yard is that it's actually, we're going to stop the engine here, but it's actually really weirdly elevated, so everything off of this spur here is actually going down a hill of like 2% grade until it actually gets to the refractory plant. The yard itself is actually about 10 to 12 feet above where the rest of the thing is. And this Y is actually also on a tilt because everything off of this main line here is a 2% grade down into here, which is really neat. There's actually a really cool photo in the Lee Rainey book, or maybe I didn't say that right. It's the, hang on, yeah, Lee Rainey and Frank Kuiper book. It's basically the EBT Bible. But there's a picture that shows a boxcar here, and I realized that my whole entire yard was level, and in fact it's actually not. It's raised and lowered in really weird places. So that is the start of that. So realistically, the EBT engines, I'm not exactly sure of how operations worked, but I would imagine that they would pull into this siding here, this one right here, and then from here it would be handed off to the switcher to run into here, which is the dump for the coal, and then from here it would go up on belts into the actual coal wash and then be dumped onto the 5 tracks here, which is kind of neat. But I got to learn more about the yard operations here. They were very weird. There was a lot of kicking cars and everything else involved in operations. Alright, moving on here as we let the engine go a little bit further. So going over here, the yard originally stopped right here in last update. However, since then I have done a lot. Basic mapping of the other refractory over here, and then the Harbison Walker plant over here. This is where the Bricktown modelers are right now in this building. It's actually not this building, but I like this building, so I want to use it on the route. But essentially, that's the Harbison Walker plant. And really interesting thing is that from the yard onward, the left track is the only track that's dual gauged. Now here, you can kind of get an insight into the yard here. You can see that it's not actually truly a dual gauge track, so it's actually just a narrow gauge track that's sandwiched on top of a standard gauge track. And while this doesn't seem like it's too concerning, we will run my version of the EBT standard gauge number 3 here, and we will run it back, and we will show you the weirdness that happens as a result of sandwiching two splines on top of each other. We'll speed a little bit here. This engine probably wouldn't go this fast. This might not be the final engine I use up here, but it's pretty close. If you're wondering where you can get this engine, it's available on Trains Forge. It is freeware, and actually for a freeware locomotive, it's got a custom cab and everything. If you see the pumps work and everything, it's truly a beautiful little engine. Highly recommend that you go pick them up. Alright, so as we speed through the yard here, we're gonna slow down a little bit. So right here, you're gonna see what happens. So we're not gonna slow down the time, and you might think, oh no, we're gonna crash. Well, downside of sandwiching two tracks on top of each other is that this won't actually interact with this at all. So you can't actually couple you can't couple a standard gauge engine to the narrow gauge stuff. Instead, what will happen is this. And you might be thinking it's crashed. No, it actually hasn't. So the engine is still fully movable, but because it is a standard gauge track that's on top of a narrow gauge track, Trains treats it as two separate tracks. So there is actually no interaction in terms of Trains between the two assets. Basically, you can think of it as this track over here being a narrow gauge track, and it thinks that this standard gauge track, it might as well be on this one over here. So when it moves through it, it thinks it's on this track. That's the best explanation I can give you. So unfortunately, when I said in my first video on this route that the dual gauge actually won't be functional, it won't be. You can kind of make it functional, but there's some weird tricks to it that you have to do, and I might be doing that, but it's a bit of a pain in the ass to do, so more than likely probably not. But moving on, that's pretty much it. I will show you the rest of the track work that I've done. So from here, like I said, this is the only dual gauge track. Everything else is standard gauge because this is the interchange with the Pennsylvania Railroad. One of the cooler things about Mount Union, there will be a lot more buildings, by the way, but you do have this road that kind of goes up and down like a roller coaster right next to the track, and it makes for some really interesting scenes on the EBT. But anyway, we arrive here, and this is officially the EBT passenger depot. So any passenger trains on the EBT would go up to right here and stop. Everything else, there was a freight terminal right here, and that's about it. Then the EBT would actually curve off here, which is what you see here, and would service the Harbison Walker plant. This would be dual gauge, by the way. Harbison Walker was serviced by both. But everything from here onward would only be standard gauge. And from here, you can see that our tracking goes right up to here. And from here, it would combine from 4-track to 3-track to 2-track to 1-track. And then the 1-track would actually connect right here. And as you can see, we've actually put in our Pensy mainline tracks, so it took me a little longer than I expected, but we do now have a more or less functional Pennsylvania mainline, excluding the fact that it clips through the ground in multiple locations. But it stops right here, but in real life it would extend all the way to Pittsburgh to the left and Philadelphia to the right. Now, clearly I'm not going to be doing that for the sake of this route. In terms of my route, it's either going to have eye portals here and here, or I'm going to make a loop where it right here cuts across and then comes to here and then loops back down. So that way, as you're switching out the yard or running trains as you would, you can see the Pennsylvania mainline trains run through, which I think would be really cool. But more to come with Mount Union in the future. It's still very much in the early stages of development, but it looks a lot better than what it did in the previous videos. But stay tuned on Mount Union. There's much to do with Mount Union. It's going to be a very fun project to do, but it's also going to be a very challenging project to do. Now, I promised that I would explain more on the route. So basically, when we get to Mount Union and finish Mount Union, it will go into a beta testing phase where we will iron out all the details, like weird track stuff that's going on or something like that. And once we do that, the route phase 1 will be ready for release, and it still will be released on Nugget trains. And like I keep my word, it will be freeware. However, I am going to put a clause on that where I say that because I put so much effort into it, I'm not going to make it payware, but I'm going to try and make it donationware. So I would very much encourage all of you who eventually end up downloading this route to at least donate like $5 to $10 to the East Broadtop Foundation or the Friends of the East Broadtop. I really can't recommend that you do that enough. Seriously, that is what keeps this railroad alive. If it wasn't for funding and donations, there would be no East Broadtop. It would have been torn up a long time ago. But so yeah, I'm gonna very highly encourage you guys to donate to the cause, because with your help, who knows, maybe one day they can reach Mount Union again. I don't know. I think it'd be really cool. I mean, realistically speaking, they don't own this part of the route, but who knows? Maybe someday that's on the agenda for them. I don't know. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching the run through of the route. Stay tuned for another update video next month. Hopefully by next month we have it mostly ready to go. But thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.